The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. What does it mean for nature to declare God's glory? How do the heavens and the sky reveal knowledge? Well, we investigate nature with science. Science is how we search for truth about the natural world. Embedded in this search is the assumption that natural laws, what we see as regular patterns, actually exist in nature and that we can detect them. We just assume this is true. We have faith that the physical laws exist. Well, where does this trust that we can uncover regular patterns in nature come from? In this video, you'll see that as we do science and discover the physical laws of nature, we are seeing a snapshot of God's governing action in the world. Scientists are detecting God's handiwork and seeing God's glory as they gain knowledge about the natural world. Well, how does God govern the universe, and how is it that science detects God's glory? Well, the Bible teaches that God speaks to create and also speaks to uphold and govern his creation. Since we study God's creation when we do science, we are investigating the results of God's speech. Science detects God's governing actions, the results of his speech, which can teach us something about the person that spoke to actualize those actions. Science is not only a search for truth about the natural world, but is also a way to know a little bit about God. Just like you will know a little about me after you watch this video, just like the words that I speak are a small reflection of me, the result of God's speech, his providential acts, can reflect some of his attributes. As we study nature, we are detecting God's governing and providential actions in the universe. We can define providence as the continued exercise of divine power by which the Creator preserves and governs all his creatures and all his creation. Let's take a look at how the Bible describes it. Jeremiah 33 says, "Thus says the Lord, if I have not established my covenant with day and night and the fixed order of heaven and earth, then I will reject the offspring of Jacob and David my servant, and will not choose one of his offspring to rule over the offspring of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." God has a covenant with day and night, with the regularities that we experience in nature. God works in and through material properties and the laws that he instituted at the beginning. These are the regular patterns that we observe in nature. God does not violate in his providence what he established in his creation. Hebrews 1 says, "He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power." Christ is upholding the universe by his word of power. Nothing that Jesus created ex nihilo is self-sustaining. The word translated upholds is better defined as to carry or to bear. So Jesus is continually carrying along all things. We see this continuous upholding as properties of substances and as physical laws. God, in preserving all that he has made, also causes his creation to maintain its properties and the physical laws that were put in place at creation. Psalm 104 explains, "You make springs gush forth in the valleys. They flow between the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. Beside them the birds of the heavens dwell. They sing among the branches. From your lofty abode you water the mountains. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of your work. You cause the grass to grow for the livestock and plants for man to cultivate." God's providential actions are present in all the regularities we observe in nature. Someone might argue that grass grows because of photosynthesis. They might even write the reaction for it. These descriptions of physical law are examples of the actions of what we call secondary causes. The government of God in the physical universe is administered by means of physical laws. God upholds the universe by agreeing with the secondary causes in accordance with the properties and the laws that he established. In terms of grass growing, God agrees that in the presence of chlorophyll, light as a secondary cause can rip electrons off water and get the process of photosynthesis started. We see this as a regular pattern in nature because God has chosen to always allow this secondary cause to happen. Well, how exactly God does this has been debated for centuries. Two proposed extremes are occasionalism and materialism or deism. Occasionalism assumes that there's no secondary causes. God remakes the universe at each moment and is the cause of everything. In the photosynthesis example, then, the light isn't the cause of anything. At one moment, the electrons are on the water, and the next moment, God has remade the universe with the electrons off the water. Materialism, as well as deism, both assume that everything is due to secondary causes with no need for God to do anything. The light is the only cause of the electrons coming off the water. Well, in the middle, we have conservatism and concurrentism. In both of these views, God contributes to the ordinary course of nature by upholding natural substance as well as the regular physical laws. Both God and light are responsible for the electrons coming off the water. A natural effect is produced then by both God and the created substances. Now, again, I'm not sure how this happens, but the main point is that God keeps all the processes occurring in a regular, predictable pattern by allowing secondary causes to act. A crude analogy would be a ball falling out of my hand with gravity as the secondary cause of the ball falling. But it's only going to happen if I concur by letting it fall. Well, God has promised that his concurrence will result in predictable and regular patterns. Genesis 8:22 says, "While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease." God had a rational plan of governance and a rational plan of providence that predated the formation of the material world. God's preservation is more than merely imparting to matter certain properties and then leaving the universe to operate on its own. This is deism. Instead, God works in and through material properties and through laws directly operating in and upon creation, continuously upholding and continuously governing. God's physical universe is administered through physical law, while he also governs all things according to his established order. This established order can then be detected through science in the form of the physical laws of nature. God's governing activity is necessary for physical laws to exist, and many scientists throughout history have acknowledged this, even if their explanation for it wasn't God. Diogenes of Apollonia, an ancient Greek Hellenistic philosopher from about 500 BC, said, "Without an intelligence, it would not be possible that the substance of things should be so distributed as to keep all nature within due measure." Einstein, one of the most famous scientists ever, points out that the ordering and the regularity we see in nature is totally unexpected. One should expect a chaotic world, which cannot be grasped by the mind in any way. One should expect the world to be subjected to law only to the extent that we order it through our intelligence. Ordering of this kind would be like the alphabet ordering of the words of a language. By contrast, the kind of order created by, say, Newton's theory of gravitation is wholly different. Even if the axioms of the theory are proposed by man, the success of such a project presupposes a high degree of ordering of the objective world, and this cannot be expected. That is the miracle which is constantly being reinforced as our knowledge expands. How can it be that mathematics, being after all the product of human thought independent of experience, is so admirably adapted to the objects of reality? The fact that the world is comprehensible is a miracle. So the regularities we see in nature are not human inventions like written language. Instead, the regularities that scientists describe, believe in, and discover are the regularities of God's own commitments and actions. God's law that governs the natural world is an expression of God's original purpose. The regularities on which science depends are, as Johannes Kepler said, thinking God's thoughts after him. Romans addresses this detection of God in nature. Romans 1 says, "For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made, so people are without excuse." Scientists throughout history have confirmed that everyone detects God's activity. Even if they don't recognize who is responsible, they perceive that something, some sort of divinity, is ultimately responsible for the regularities we discover in nature. Natural law is the result of God's governing action. As scientists study the physical world, they detect the regularities that are the result. Nature is declaring God's glory by demonstrating the attributes of the Creator. For example, scientists think of laws as universal in time and space. Therefore, these laws are omnipresent and eternal. The laws are also the same all the time. Therefore, they're immutable. We only see the effects of the laws. We don't see the law itself. Therefore, the laws are immaterial and invisible. Also, the real laws, not our fallible interpretations and approximations of them, but the real laws that God spoke, they are infallibly true. No event escapes the laws or changes them. Therefore, they are omnipotent. Scientific law is also accessible to human understanding, so it's rational and therefore also personal. And we express the scientific laws in symbols and language. Therefore, the original law has the ability to be grammatically articulated, paraphrased, translated, and illustrated. Law is therefore language-like or utterance-like, and since language only belongs to persons, scientific law is personal. So scientific law looks a lot like God. We are detecting God's attributes in nature. Of course, a scientific law is not omnipresent in the same way that God is omnipresent, and a physical law is not eternal in the same way that God is eternal. We are only seeing glimpses of God's attributes through the laws of nature, just like you see glimpses of my attributes when you hear this talk. My speech is not me, but you can detect a bit about me. Natural law is not God, but through it you can detect a bit about God. Also keep in mind that the laws that humans come up with are only crude approximations of the real laws that God spoke into existence. But these crude approximations still reflect God's faithfulness and his usual way of doing things. So natural law is God's revelation of himself through his governance in the world. Therefore, we will see characteristics of the Creator in creation. Christians call this general revelation. Scientific law really means the Word of God, or at least a human's formulation of an approximation of God's original divine Word. Werner Heisenberg, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, recognized this by saying that physics is a reflection on the divine ideas of creation. Therefore, physics is divine service. Well, we need to recapture a robust doctrine of providence like Werner Heisenberg had. We need to regain a sense of wonder and the ability to see natural law as a reflection of how the world is sustained by a God who continuously acts and governs. This view of providence will not only allow us to see some of God's attributes, but will also give us ultimate meaning and worth. What we are observing in nature, including us, is what was decreed by God for eternity and what was spoken by God at the beginning. Each of us is a result of a thought, a divine decree, and a speech act by God. While science investigates God's continual providential action and is able to detect God's attributes, a robust view of providence also provides us with ultimate meaning. God had to plan from eternity for you to be here right now and has been working continuously from the beginning of the universe to make you possible. This gives you meaning. It gives us meaning and purpose that is grounded in God's reasons for creating you. You have value, you have meaning, and you have purpose that is totally independent of what you are able to accomplish or what you do or don't do. God's reasons for creating and sustaining the universe culminated in the person of Jesus, who came to earth to mend the fractured relationship between us and God. Because we constantly break God's law, we are separated from God. So God provided a way to repair this relationship through the person of Jesus. God, the Creator, who continuously sustains, continually carries, and continually bears everything that occurs in the universe, wants a relationship with you. And you can have that relationship through the person of Jesus.